Most of us come to prayer the same way. We arrive with a need, we bring a situation, a burden, a question. It might even be a desperation, something that's been hanging over us, it's been pressing on us for days, weeks, maybe even longer. And typically, we begin to speak at that point. We pour out everything that we came with. We ask for what we need, and we state the case as clearly as we can to the Lord. And then we wait, if we wait at all, for an answer. And often it feels like we're just met with silence. And in the silence, it feels like nothing's happening. But what if that silence is not a sign of absence? What if the problem isn't that God isn't responding, but that we've got the whole order wrong? I want to take a look at Psalm 40, written by David. He says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet on the rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. And many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. It's 3 verses that we've got here. It's very short, and 5 movements that are contained within it. And every one of them flows from the first 3 words. I waited patiently. Not cried out first, not asked first, right? Not even worship first in the way that we think of worship, something that we do to warm up before prayer begins. He says he waited, and not just waited, he waited patiently. That implies time. And when you understand what that word actually means in Hebrew, when you go beneath the English translation into the root of the thing, it changes everything about how you pray, about how you come to prayer. So the Hebrew word translated waited, or waited patiently rather, is kah-vah. And it doesn't primarily mean just to sit still and endure, wait it out. The root of the word is a rope being twisted. It's the strands of a rope being wound together until they become one cord. It's a powerful image. Strong, where each strand alone would break. Bound together in a way that cannot easily be separated. That's what that word means. So David, he isn't describing this passive resignation when we think about waiting patiently, right? He's describing a becoming, a drawing together, a process by which the one who waits is being wound around the one who he's waiting for, strand by strand, moment by moment, until the two are bound into something that functions as one. And we see St. Paul, he describes exactly this image beside kah-vah in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17. He says, but he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. So the joining is the point. The union is what the waiting produces. And the waiting is how the union happens. So think about what this means for your daily life, your own prayer life, and your day-to-day. Your communion with the Lord, the moments that you've spent in his presence, not speaking, not asking, not even interceding, the moments of simply remaining, of lingering, of staying when you felt nothing, of returning to the silence when it just feels like it's always continuing. These moments are not wasted, not one bit, you better believe it. These have been the moments of twisting, the slow, patient work of strands being wound together, of a life being bound to a life until the two begin to function as one. So you might not have felt it happening. Rope doesn't feel itself being twisted, right? But the binding is real, and it takes place in that patient waiting. Now, notice something in the text that is often really easy to read past. David doesn't say that he waited for the Lord to speak, right? He doesn't say that he waited for the Lord to answer or to provide or to deliver. He says, I waited for the Lord. Just him, his person, his presence, not the gift, the giver. Not the word, but the one who speaks. Not the deliverance, but the deliverer. And this distinction is the difference between 2 entirely different orientations of the praying soul. Most of us come to prayer primarily for what we hope God will do. And the need's real. It's not dismissing that. Absolutely, we need to come to God with our needs. The desperation is genuine. There's nothing manipulative or cynical about that. Let me get that straight. But if we're honest, and the Psalms ask us to be honest, the primary object of our attention is the thing that we've come about, and God is the means by which we hope to resolve it. He's the means to the end. And David has learned something different, and he's teaching us, if we'll stop to see. He's learned, and it's taken him years. It always takes time. That the Lord himself is the goal. He's the portion. He's the prize. And that is the presence of God. His presence is the gift. That to have him, this is what David is saying, attentive, inclined, near, is already everything that you could possibly hope for. He says, I waited for the Lord. Not for what the Lord would do for me, but for the Lord. What would it do to your prayer life if you came to him tomorrow morning or today wanting him more than wanting what he can give? Not as a performance of spirituality, right? As a genuine reorientation of desire, as the slow, repeated choice to make him the primary thing rather than the means to the primary thing. That shift, which sounds really simple, is in practice one of the most demanding things a human person can do. It's where everything else in this psalm begins, though. It goes on to say, he inclined to me. The Hebrew word for this is nata. It's to stretch toward, to bend, to tilt the ear in the direction of the one speaking. It's a physical image. The whole body leaning, the ear turned, the attention given fully and without distraction to the one who's been waiting. So it's to say that God inclines toward the waiting soul. Wow, what an amazing promise. Not as a reward for spiritual performance, right? Not because the waiting has earned something, hear me straight, but because this is what God does in the presence of the one who has come not for what he can give, but for who he is. This is how he responds. And I want you to feel the weight of that image in your own life today. There are people in your world, you know this, whose attention you have to fight for. I'm sure faces are coming to mind now. People who are present in body, but they're elsewhere in mind. Their eyes are on the screen while you're speaking. People who hear the words, but they're already composing their response before you've even finished your sentence. But then come the rare ones, the ones who lean in, who turn toward you fully, whose attention is a gift you feel in your body even. God leans in. He inclined to me, David said. The God who holds galaxies in place, who sustains every atom of creation in existence by the word of his power, he turns toward the waiting soul. He leans in, tilts toward you, gives you the full weight of his attention. Not to the impressive prayer, right? Not to the most eloquent one. I can't get the words either. To the waiting one. That's the one to whom he comes. The waiting is what draws the inclining, and the inclining is what changes everything. David goes on then to say, he inclined to me and heard my cry. So the cry comes third, not first. And this is the inversion of what most of us typically do. We cry out first. We bring the need, we bring the desperation, the urgency of the situation that's pressing on us. And then we wait impatiently, anxiously even, for a response that doesn't come in the timing that we expected. But David, he shows us the sequence runs the other way. He waited for the Lord. Kah-vah, twisted together, bound. And then God inclined, nata, he leaned toward the waiting soul. And then in the context of this intimacy, within the space created by the waiting and the inclining, the cry was heard. So the cry doesn't initiate the encounter, the waiting initiates it. This is so important. The inclining follows, and then the hearing happens within an intimacy that the waiting has produced. Now bring this into your own life. Think about this. You've got a situation, undoubtedly, maybe you've got multiple situations right now, real situations, something that's pressing on you that you've brought to God more times than you can count, and you haven't resolved them yet. They don't feel resolved. and the silence around it has felt like God just isn't responding? What if the invitation isn't to cry louder, but to wait longer, to wait more patiently? Not to state the case more urgently, but to remain in his presence more patiently. Not to do more, but to become more deeply bound. Because the cry will be heard. David is emphatic about that. He makes that so clear in this psalm. The cry is heard, but it's heard within the encounter, not before it. In Luke chapter 6, verses 12 and 13, it says, in these days, talking about the Lord, he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God. And when the day came, he called his disciples and chose from them the 12. An entire night he spends. And the question ought to press on us very simply, why, Lord? You're the Son of God. You could have received a word of knowledge, no problem. Just download, let's go. He could have got it in an instant. He could have known the names of the 12 without a minute of prayer, let alone a night. He's the one through whom all things were made. Surely the choosing of the 12 fishermen and the tax collectors, it doesn't require 12 hours of prayer on a mountain. Why, Lord? Unless the prayer was not primarily about the choosing. Hear me. Unless the night on the mountain was not a means to an end, but the thing itself. The being with the Father, the kah-vah of the eternal Son, twisted together with the eternal Father in the darkness before the dawn. He waited all night because he loved to be with the Father. And because he knew, as only he fully knows, how much the decision required not just information, but formation. Not just a name, but a heart that had spent the night in the Father's presence before the weight of the day was going to be placed upon it. And here's what this means for you. Sometimes the Lord allows the waiting to take time. Not because he's slow, not because the answer isn't ready. God's always ready. But because he knows what the waiting does in you, in me. He knows that if he speaks the first moment, you take the word and you run ahead without him. Thanks, Lord, I got it from here. He knows you need the time in his presence more than you need the answer. And he loves to be with you. And he knows better than you know yourself how much you need to be with him. Something is being produced in the waiting. And he'll wait for the third hour to speak often because you needed that time in his presence to be transformed. And then David says, finally, later on in that psalm, that he drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet on a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Follow what happens after the waiting, after the inclining, after the hearing. The pit's real, the miry bog. This is not a metaphor for mild inconvenience. This is the language of a genuine desperation. This is a man who felt himself sinking, losing ground, unable to find purchase in the shifting earth beneath him. And this is your situation, undoubtedly. You've got something like this going on. That's the thing that you've been carrying. And God draws him out, sets his feet on a rock, and gives him a song. Notice, the song isn't manufactured by David. It is given. He put a song in my mouth. David doesn't generate it by effort or spiritual discipline alone. He receives it as a gift. It's placed there from outside himself, from within the encounter, as the fruit of the waiting that preceded everything else. You can't sing a song that you've not yet received. You can't yet receive what hasn't yet been given. And it's given in the waiting. This is the promise underneath Psalm 40. Not that the waiting is painless, right? Hey, I get it. The flesh burns. Not that the pit isn't real, but that the one who waits for the Lord, who comes for him, who stays long enough for the twisting to happen, who lets the kah-vah do its slow, patient work, will find themselves drawn up, set on rock, given a song that they could never have written themselves. A song that will make many see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Not because you performed it, because you received it in the waiting. So let's bring this all the way home. You've been coming to prayer with the need first, and the need's real. Bring it. God isn't afraid of your desperation, of your urgency, your tears. He's not insecure about your mess. But come for him first. Come wanting him more than wanting what he can give. Come ready to stay longer than feels comfortable usually to you. Come ready to remain in silence, not as a passive resignation, but as kah-vah, as the active, costly, life-giving work of being twisted together with the one who is himself the life that you're looking for. And then watch what he does. He's going to incline towards you. He's going to lean in. He's going to turn the full weight of his attention toward you. Not because you earned it, but because this is who he is toward the waiting soul. And in that inclining, in that leaning in, your cry will be heard. Not the performance of the cry from within the encounter, the cry of the person who has been in his presence long enough to know that what they're asking for is real and that the one they are asking is truly good. And he'll draw you up. He will set your feet on rock. He will put a new song in your mouth. Not despite the waiting, but through it. Not after the waiting ends, but from within it. As David said, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. This isn't a formula. It's a testimony. It's what David discovered over a lifetime of prayer, of intimacy with the Lord. It's what Jesus demonstrated on the mountain before the dawn. And it's what 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17 names as the telos, the goal of the whole interior life. He who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. One spirit, twisted together, bound. That is what the waiting produces. If this blessed you, come on, subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm putting out videos every week, opening up the scriptures, seeking deeper revelation, wisdom and revelation from the Lord. And please leave a comment below. I read every single one of them. I want to hear from you. Let me know what landed, what resonated. And if you know somebody who needs this today, share it with them. This can be a gift. Freely receive, freely give it away. Come on, share it. But for now, in whatever you're carrying, in whatever silence that you feel like you're sitting in, wait for him patiently. Not for what he'll do, but for him. Because eternal life starts now.